Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank each of the witnesses for being here. We have a lot of conversation back and forth between the parties on this topic. And I'm always encouraged to hear that each side recognizes that we really do have a problem, or at least they say so as well. That we know that the debt today, or the interest is $1 trillion, is going to go to $2 trillion. I heard Mr. Doggett mention that fact. And then it sort of breaks down there. We can't have a real discussion around how we're going to resolve this. And that's really, really disappointing. And now I'll give credit to a few members on the other side, Mr. Panetta and Mr. Peters, who voted for, I think it was just the two of them, who voted for a debt commission, a fiscal commission, that I think is absolutely critical to have the kind of conversation with the American people about exactly where we stand. So I do applaud them for that. But I want to go to something that Mr. Peters had just said when he was in the discussion with you, Mr. Rao. He asked the question whether increasing taxes affects economic activity, essentially. That was the question. And the answer is certainly yes. Otherwise, let's just make the tax on the top earners 100% if it doesn't impact economic activity. Well, we all know that would be completely unworkable. Economic activity could stop. So the point I'm making is there is an optimum tax rate that drives a strong economy, that encourages investment and growth, but then it also pays for the core functions of government that the American people expect from their government. And I would say that Americans probably, or so, maybe they aren't, but should be, if they really understand what we're facing, willing to ensure that the two match, that our revenues and what Americans expect from the government match. But I can tell you this, when I talk to people in my district, they sort of, as a hunch, understand that the government has grown way out of control. It's why they like what DOGE is doing, by the way, where we literally are finding that there's much more waste, even fraud, like people ripping off the American taxpayer. And people have always expected that would be the case. They also think the federal government is bloated. We're spending far too much. And that's, I think, the point I want to make here. And either Mr. Winfrey, Mr. Rao, you can answer this. My understanding is that revenues generally throughout our history have been roughly 17, 18% of GDP. Does that sound right? Or at least throughout the last 50 years?
30 years.
Last 30 years? Yeah. And how much has spending increased during that time? Spending
averages 21.1% of GDP over the last 30 years, and it's currently 23.7%. So 2.6% of GDP higher. And so that just goes to show, all these claims that the problem is that we don't have enough revenues. That's not correct. The problem is that spending has increased.
Yeah. So it's clearly, if you'll see it on the graph, and Mr. Roy's graph was great, but if you graphed revenue, even after the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, is essentially 17, 18% of the economy, and spending is doing this. And so when I talk to people in my district, they clearly understand that we do have a spending problem. Then I want to make one additional point. Democrats talk about the Republican tax bill as a tax cut for the rich. But this isn't quite true, right? If we allow tax cuts, the tax cuts to expire at the end of 2025, we will see a tax increase for almost every American, certainly at every tax bracket, and we'd see a tax increase for every small business that are really the lifeblood of our community. They're reinvesting back into their companies, employees, and their communities. And in fact, the tax increase would be at a higher percentage for middle-income Americans and low-income Americans than the top rate. Am I correct on that?
No, that's incorrect. The average tax cut for people at the very top was, so the average tax cut for somebody into 0.1% is roughly $300,000 a year. The average...
As a percentage of their tax...
As a percentage of their income, it's about 3% of their income. whereas somebody in the bottom 20%, the average was basically zero. They got almost nothing. Somebody in the middle maybe got 1%. But as you correctly said, many people in the middle got nothing. Some people actually ended up paying more.
Do you agree with that,
It's not true that the tax increase would be much more significant for people.
Sorry,
at the
Mr.
top.
Linden. Do you agree with that?
So in general, there was about a 1% increase in after-tax income across the board. It depends how you account for corporate income taxes. I have the distribution table from the TCJA in front of me. If you look at it, the actual share of federal taxes paid by people earning over $1 million was 19.3% before the TCJA, and it was 19.8% thereafter. That means people at the lower end of the spectrum got a tax cut that was disproportionately large relative to the amount they paid, which is smaller.
Those are the charts I've seen as
But
well.
not as a share,
And,
not as a
Mr.
share
Linden,
of their income.
Mr. Linden, this is my
Congressman,
time.
you
No,
asked
this is
about the
my
share.
time. I'm
You
not
asked about
going
the
to
share.
sit.
You asked about the share of income.
Mr.
Not
Linden.
the share of taxes paid. And the
Mr.
share of
Chairman, would
Mr.
you
Linden,
restore order?
listen, we're going to let the vice chairman control the time. If he directs a question to you, we'll give you ample time to answer it. So
And which I did in this time as well. I do not have for the record, but I'd be glad to share it with the committee later. I've seen charts that showing that disproportionately we provide a greater benefit to middle-income Americans and certainly those at the lower end of the scale. And the point I want to make with it is this. Democrats, by not supporting the extension of the tax cuts, are increasing taxes at a higher percentage rate on middle-income Americans and low-income Americans and on every small business across the country. I think it's important that that be said. I wish we could get together and have real discussions because we have a serious problem going forward. We have to get to the point of being able to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.